All right, let's go. Hello, everyone. My name is Taf, and welcome to our Medmentor weekly live session. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. So, I'm here to answer all your questions. Hello, Bodyband Studio. Thanks for joining us again. It's nice to see you. So, if you've got any questions for me, please drop them below either in the comments or drop them as a question card. And as per usual, I'll be answering them to the best of my ability. So, the last few weeks, we've answered loads of different questions from things about personal statement to entrance exams to life as a med student to current affairs in the sphere of medicine and healthcare. So there's a lot we can discuss. There's a lot I can hopefully help you guys with. Just drop what you want to talk about below or your questions, and that'll be a good way to start. From my point of view, so my name is Tafsir. I'm a final year medical student at UCL. I'm part of the Medmentor team, and I carry out the weekly live clinic sessions. We've got a whole host of people as part of our Medmentor team that where you can go on to our website and have a look at the blogs that we've got up. We've got loads of content, great content and useful content out on our social media sites, and our team are working really hard behind the scenes to bring you guys the best stuff to help you through your medical school application processes. So yeah, that's us. Hello, Brokes. I think that's your name. Hi, another sparring medic. Nice to have you on again. Love your questions as per usual. So I'm looking forward to answering a few today. I've got a few questions already provided to me by Lucy Shear 04, and I'll be answering a few of those as well as we begin. So let's talk about the last few weeks in terms of medicine and healthcare news. First of all, the vaccine rollout has been continuing here in the UK. It's been going really well with huge numbers being vaccinated for their first dose, and now we've got our second dose coming out too. So that's kind of the big headline because obviously coronavirus is having such an impact still day-to-day functioning of hospitals and healthcare in general. However, the great thing that we've started to see, and now we've completely seen, is that ITU capacity has been freed up a lot more, and we are doing better in the hospital with less COVID cases, and therefore needing less volunteers to help out plug the coordinator gaps. So that's really good to see. And yeah, loads of stuff going on. I'll talk to you guys about a few podcasts that I've been listening to the last few weeks as well around healthcare that you guys might find useful. Stay tuned for that towards the end of the live session as we start talking about those things. Brilliant. All right, so Amy has joined us and Roshan's joined us. Hey guys, thanks for joining us. I've got my first question coming from Megan. Hey Megan, how are you doing today? So can you explain what a registrar is? Yes, I can. So a registrar is a title of a doctor. So it's a level of a doctor at a certain point in their kind of career, and that normally is just before they become a consultant, and after they've been foundation doctors, the period that they are kind of like junior doctors are those years that they're a registrar. I think I've heard the word registrar in hospital medicine. So that's to do with like medicine, and as well as like a surgery, so like surgical registrars. Typically they're like CT1, CT2, and ST3 all the way to like ST7. So CT meaning core trainee, ST meaning specialty trainee. Each training pathway in medicine has their own like labels of what they call their registrars, but that's that period. So that period where you finish F1, F2, all the way until you're consultant doctor. That's what I understand as the registrar period to be like, but they're normally just called junior doctors in the first place. Brilliant. Okay, hopefully that's answered that. Good way to start. Nice and simple. Good to hear, Megan. Hey guys, nice to see the excitement on the chat. Thanks for joining us. We've got 8 people so far, so it's good. So Roshan goes, hope your application cycle is going well to another aspiring medic. Oh, that's lovely to see. Bodyband Studio asks, what's the best way to get surgical training from first year? There isn't like what's the best way to get surgical training. So like by first year, you can't so F1, F2 are those like first few years of being a doctor, and then you go in. Then you at the end of F2, or if you take it F3 at the end of F3, you then do some exams or you apply for your specialty trainee program. So that would be you doing like a surgical exam and doing like a surgical specialty application. So that's what you do at the end of your foundation year 1 and 2. And the best way to get into those surgical training pathways are to boost your portfolio, to get good results in your medical school exams. So that adds to your portfolio academically, but also adding research to that, adding leadership opportunities to that. And that's stuff that you do throughout medical school, as well as in your F1, F2 year to help develop that skills. You also want to start like getting experience in surgery as well. So you want to do a rotation in surgery in F1, F2. You want to observe a few surgeries and record that as well. But there's a whole host of things. It's based on a point-based system that changes year on year. So if you're really, really keen and interested, I'd encourage you to go look at the Royal College of Surgeons and see what they look for in a great application. And that's what how you get into a surgical training program. But yeah, mainly if you can pass the exams and get into training through the application process, that's it. You're in specialty training. So wherever you want to go. Hopefully that's helped you a little bit, Bodyband Studio. I think that question is a little bit advanced for me as well, seeing as I don't know, or many people in my year don't know even the answers to that. But these are things that you find out as you go along and you adapt to it, which is good. Cool. Just to bear in mind, you guys, we are also live on YouTube and Twitter and on our website and on Facebook, hopefully. And that's where we're answering your questions as well as being on Instagram. So have a look around if you want to have access to other places, which is great. Okay. Nice. All right, cool. The next question that I've got, so Roshan and another paramedic having a little conversation. Good luck with hearing back. Another aspiring medic. Can't wait to hear from you getting your offers. That'll be great. Amy goes, do UCL still do full body cadaver dissections? Yes. I know they market themselves as a mix of pro section and dissection, full body, but I've heard stuff about prospectus changes. Oh, okay. I didn't know if there was any prospectus changes. To my knowledge right now, I thought that they were still doing full body dissection. We did have a lot of pro section stuff mixed in with full body dissection, because pro sections, there's quite a lot of advantages to that as well. That you can actually see detailed viewings of like the segment of the body you're mostly interested in, rather than having to cut through, like, sorry for being quite a little bit graphic here, but like you're going to have to cut through a lot of tissue and kind of like organs and structures before you get to the part that you really need to see. So for example, I realized how the pro section is really useful when I needed to like see the nerves of the brachial plexus, which is in like the shoulder and the arms, and that those nerves were very difficult to find in a full body dissection, because you had to really be good at dissection to find them. So I found them really useful to just see in a pro section that was already done for us. So it's like Blue Peter, that's like, it's something that's already been done for you. But yeah, that when you do learn in these university places with full body dissection, you get some pro section chucked in as well, not in place of it, but in addition to it, which is really useful. More than anything, I think anatomy, full body, like anatomy and dissection, in my opinion, was a little bit overrated when it came to actually revising for anatomy spotter exams in medical school, because I realized that I learnt more and I learnt better by using something called Ackland's clinical anatomy like videos, and all like universities in the world have access basically to that. And this guy who does the Ackland's videos goes literally dissects through all the structures of the body from head to toe, with all the relevant bits of anatomy and stuff that you need to know with it. And it's just so useful because when you're revising a couple of like weeks, days before the exam, you can't go into an anatomy lab and like re-dissect and find stuff. It's just really good to see. So either way, I wouldn't stress too much, because I think all medical students know and love Ackland's website and his videos. Rest in peace to the guy who passed away a couple of years ago. And yeah, so there's like loads of opportunities to just be on top of your dissection either way. Yeah, cool. Sorry, I just waffled a little bit on that one, but hopefully that got to the point a little bit. But yeah, I don't know if they've changed anything yet, but from what I knew, that UCL loved the fact that UCL loves talking about the fact that we have full body dissection, and I'm sure all the interviewees this year talked about full body dissection as well. So I don't think that it's been taken away just yet. But yeah, check for your year, Amy. It might be worthwhile. If it's on the internet, then it's true. All right, cool. So let's get some questions answered, and then we'll get back to the chat. Hey guys, nice. Thanks for joining us, guys. Good to see you all. All right. So the question I have most recently is from another aspiring medic. Love your questions. So let's crack on with them. How true is the stereotype that you're either an anatomy person or a physiology person? That's an interesting thing. I don't think I've heard that thing, like you're an anatomy person or a physiology person in medical school. Maybe that's just me. I've definitely heard are you more of a medic or more of a surgeon, or maybe more of a GP or a psychiatry type, like that type of medic. So I've definitely heard you're definitely a surgeon type medic or surgical medic. So I think if that's anatomy, yes, I've heard it. It's true that there is a stereotype. I've had friends who are obsessed with surgery, and in when it came to full body dissections, they were at it, and they were really focused and throughout with that. Whilst I have many medics that really love their physiology so much, it's almost a hobby for them. So and they find it really interesting. And so yes, you can have those stereotypes. I think when it comes to actual exams, you need to have a bit of both in medical school, because obviously you get tested on both, and one doesn't exist without the other, in my opinion. So when it came to learning, I really liked both aspects, especially in preclinical year when we were talking about it a lot, and then integrating that with clinical year knowledge. It was really good to have both of those behind me. But yeah, so some truth to it, I guess. But yeah, that's an interesting stereotype indeed. All right, another aspiring medic goes, are there any resources you'd recommend gap year people to look at before med school? I would say 100% no. Do not look at anything medicine, because you've got the next 5 to 6 years to study that thing. And also, there's a reason why you've had that 1 year. They do give you enough time, kind of, to study medicine within that year. And I think term time really increases your productivity and in terms of what you need to learn, and it guides you through, obviously the lectures and stuff guide you through what you need to know. So I think sometimes jumping ahead doesn't quite so often work, because that just means you're studying hard rather than smart, because you don't know what you don't need to know and what you do need to know until you've seen the lectures, spoken to the people in the years above, had a taste of the type of exam questions that come up. So you really have no idea. I walked into medical school having forgotten where even the heart was in the body, or even the fact that it had 4 chambers, basic biology. I had forgotten everything. That's not a problem. You just rehash everything. And I think it's interesting, because when you're in a high stress environment, so let's say I've mentioned to you guys how some of our lectures in medical school go through so many topics so quickly, you don't know what's going on at all. I said sometimes in a chapter of a biology book that you guys will have in A level, we'd cover that in basically 5 minutes of a lecture. So that sort of stuff makes you just refresh your memory really quickly for basic principles, and then you learn much quicker because you just have to keep up with it. It's like sink or swim. So I think it's a good amount of stress to get you motivated to do the work in the time period. So whilst working through summer, you dilly-dally, you don't really you're not really fully resting, you're not fully doing any work, you're kind of in the middle, and then you have more chance of burning out. So I think that's just something to bear in mind that I've seen with friends before, and I don't think any medic ever tells anyone else to revise over summer holidays or before your year starts, because you just need to enjoy yourself as it is, and then come refreshed and ready, so you don't suffer from any burnout early on, which will be useful. In terms of resources you'd recommend gap year people, so you said other resources in general, I think is if you'd really want to do some light refresher stuff, I'd say Osmosis has a really good YouTube channel, and I'd maybe just watch a few of those videos because they're nice to watch, but they also give you a good baseline understanding of the physiology and anatomy behind the disease processes. So that's Osmosis YouTube videos. They're just really good for everything. I use them in med school since I first found out about them, and I still do as a final year. So if there's anything that you just want to refresh, maybe just look at that. But yeah, nothing that I would recommend. Okay. Nice. All right, let's see. Is there any other questions from people? How are you guys? How's the last week or in healthcare news? Anyone been reading anything interesting? Any random comments that you have about medicine or med school life or questions that you have that you want answered? We can maybe talk about even things like living out at uni, or just things that you could take up in societies and things like that. Sorry, I was not here last week for our Medmentor live session. There was something just came up, and so I wasn't able to join. So I did miss you guys in that, but it's nice to be back on to see all the questions. Cool. So I'll press ahead. Study by shares goes, how do I start prepping for the UCAT? So study by shares, I've answered this question last week on 2 weeks ago on the Medmentor weekly clinic that we're doing here. So it's recorded, so I think you could have a look at that and see things more in depth. But what I briefly mentioned is that you want to start revising for it maybe 4 to 6 weeks before the actual UCAT and steady your way in. I recommended Medify as a source to use for your UCAT revision, and we've got a few posts on our Instagram page if you just have a look on Medify and what to use, and a few clips of how I explained it as well. So have a look at the previous videos. I've explained it fully there. So yeah, Medify is the resource that I'd recommend, as Medmentor as well. We've got a blog on the Medmentor website about the UCAT, and basically familiarize yourself with the type of exam it is, the type of content that's required for you to kind of go through. It's a very different exam than anything you'll ever do or have had before. So it's getting your head around it, and that's how to start prepping for it. I'd also recommend maybe getting a basics UCAT book to help you with technique. So I got a book from Kaplan that just helped me with exam technique early on, and explained and it introduced me and explained the type of questions that would come up. Those were really helpful to give me a framework at the beginning before I started doing proper practice, which is the bulk of the UCAT. Practice. Cool. I hope I've answered your question there, study by Shez. So I just saw it come in again, which is great. Thank you. Any follow-ups, let me know. Cool. All right. The next questions I got were from Lucy Shear. So you guys carry on going. Drop me questions below. And Lucy Shear asked some questions yesterday when we said, does anyone have any questions? So should you mention university webinars or lectures you have attended in your personal statement? Yes, you should, if you have space and it works within your personal statement and links to other things that you want to talk about. But mentioning it is not just the one thing that you'd want to do. You want to reflect on what you took from that or those webinars or lectures. So for example, in my case, I went to King's College's Medicine in Action or something lectures. I don't know if that still is a thing. So they used to do lectures every Wednesday evening for year 12s and 13s who are applying to med school, and it was just to do with medicine related topics. So I went to a few, and I went to one that really interested me, was on malignant pleural mesothelioma, which is a cancer of the lungs due to asbestos poisoning. And I mentioned that I went to that lecture because I had linked it with the summer school experience that I went to around cancer research, and a few books that I read around the topic as well. And so that's why I linked it, for example. And I said I used to go to those lectures fortnightly because I did, and that shows you some commitment that I was quite interested in medicine in general. And that was nice to see. And obviously now you guys have everything online, and it's exactly the exact same things apply. I even saw on YouTube a few ethics and law lectures from Oxford University by a medical professor there. And I didn't mention it in my personal statement, but I did mention it when I was in an interview. And these are just interesting things for me at that time, and things that show that you have a real interest in medicine. So yes, include those things. All right. Aisha asked, are there any websites or blogs you would recommend to keep up with medical news? Yes, I would recommend literally just looking at the BBC News Health website. And I put it as a widget on my phone back in the day when I had a Samsung phone. And every day, like I used to spend like maybe 5-10 minutes just reading any like hot news on the BBC Health tab. It was just really easy to read. It was like a page for an article or 2 pages max. It was very they used layman's terms, so nothing like that was very complex. And if I found something a little bit more interesting, I also had the Guardian Health app on my phone, and I had to look at that because they just Guardian Health they spoke more, so the Guardian, and it was the health section or the science section underneath that. They had a lot more about whatever the article was about. Like they went in a little bit more depth, and it wasn't like really scientific or something, but it was quite interesting in the way that they went into depth with it, and it broadened my horizons on that topic. So BBC News Health and the Guardian. A question for you guys: do you guys use any websites or blogs to keep up with medical news? Because obviously I did this like 7 years ago, and I still use the same things like BBC News Health and The Guardian. But also now I'm all over Twitter as well now, where I get a lot of my news from, just because that's how it works. So I follow loads of people in like healthcare and science right now who publish like their research findings and things like that. And so that's how I keep up with some of my tertiary level medical news when I need to. But yeah, that's how Twitter works nowadays, isn't it? You can find news everywhere and anywhere. The Independent is really good as well. And yeah, that's that. The last thing I'd say is the BMJ. Yes, Study Inspo. You read my mind. So the BMJ is brilliant. New Scientist newsletter. Ooh, New Scientist newsletter. You know what? I think I found the New Scientist newsletter quite difficult to read back in year 12 or 13. Never tried it since. So that's pretty good if you guys are reading that and it's accessible. And yes, Twitter is really helpful. Yep, Roshan said Twitter is really helpful as well. You can follow different professors and stuff, which is quite interesting. I mean, it'd be quite funny if like in the middle of a med school interview, like, oh, what did you read up on recently? And obviously you could say like you read it from an article, but you can also say, oh, but on Twitter I saw this professor, like Professor Sridi, who's at the University of Edinburgh, and she's quite big on COVID, as Roshan knows because she's going to go up there and meet her. But she is like quite big on all these of like what's going on in the COVID pandemic, and she's almost better than some of the news articles out there because it's real time tweets, info, unfiltered stuff. So you can mix a few things in. Wow, we are in 2021. PubMed articles are great, but I even to this day, I recently got published on PubMed, and I still to this day find it difficult to read any articles on PubMed, even though I've got something up on this. So don't worry if you can't go on that. But the student BMJ is brilliant. And I did read a few articles on that. So I remember in my UCL interview, I talked about how the new thing of vaping was, whether that was a good or bad thing in terms of like people taking it up, helping people to quit smoking, the carcinogens inside them. So what I actually did is read a BBC News Health article on vaping and like the problems and the benefits of it. And then I read a Guardian article on it, which added a few other points that I could think about. And then I actually read a student BMJ article about vaping, and it had more science in, it had more clinical relevance in, and it was like a double page spread, and I highlighted through it. And then in my UCL interview, I basically told them like I was interested in it. So I read this, and these are my opinions on it. I basically spent 3 minutes hashing out the for and against of whether vaping is a good thing or not. So those are the things that I think I just expanded your question there, Aisha. So hopefully that's helped you. There's a few other things that you can do with that. Thank you guys for contributing down below. Yeah. I really like what you guys have been saying here. And student BMJ New Scientists, I'm going to give that a go again to hopefully be able to understand what's going on in it. That would be quite nice. Great. Oh, thank you, another sparring medic. Yes. And I will talk to you guys maybe about my publication at another time. But it's to do with GPs and it's to do with widening participation for medicine as well. So stuff that I like doing. Nothing to do with cellular science, unfortunately, because I was not too scientific in my thought process in it. Cool. Yes, Twitter is amazing. A tweet from the Lancet was one of the first things, as well as Gray's, that led to my EPQ topic. Oh, mad. Wait, what happened in Gray's that led you to your EPQ topic? I remember we talked about this before. Remind us, Amy, of your EPQ topic. And what in Gray's thought made you think of doing it? Oh, I love Gray's. I remember in second year, I had a question in my exam about newborn babies' lungs and what like you'd give to help basically grow their lungs. And I remember in season 2 of Grey's Anatomy, Izzy said that you'd give dexamethasone or something to a preterm baby, and I put that answer, and that was right. And that's how I passed one of the questions in my second year exams. Shambles, absolute shambles. Anyway, I don't know why I admitted to that in the middle of a live stream. Let's move on to Roshan. She goes, really glad you encouraged me to go to my other interview last month because I got another offer this week. Woo! Celebration. Roshan, congratulations. Oh, amazing stuff. That's what we like to hear. So Roshan is a proud member of the 2 Offer Club. One thing that I was not able to be part of, which is great to see, Roshan. You absolutely smashed it. I'm glad to hear. And I'm guessing now obviously you're still sticking with Edinburgh. I'm guessing. What was the other university again? Was it Glasgow or was it something else? I don't know why why I keep on thinking of Glasgow, but yeah, that's it. Oh, well, that's amazing stuff. Good. And yes, Twitter is amazing. Congrats, Roshan. Nice. Brilliant. Yeah, so there was an episode where a guy suffered a facial trauma and Mark performed a face transplant for it. Oh my God. Yes, I remember what you're talking about. And Mark was insane. I don't know how we got into this part of the live stream, but yep, that's good. And it was Glasgow. Wicked. Absolutely smashed it, Roshan. Really glad to see. Woo! Keep doing it. So, lesson learned from Roshan, even if you've got an offer to a great med school, it's worth continuing and doing more interviews if you've been offered them, because that's just great experience, and it's also a great morale boost to get another offer. So that's good stuff. Study inspo goes, when is the best way to start revising? When is the best way? So when is the best time is I said 4 to 6 weeks before the UCAT. And the best way to start revising is using books as well as Medify is what I mentioned, but mainly practice with the UCAT papers as well. Brilliant. Oh, Roshan, it's so good to have you back always, even though that you don't really need us anymore at all. So thanks for joining us. I just realized that as well, which is great. All right, cool. Few other questions. Drop your questions to us, guys. Let's. I can answer questions on your personal statement stuff, about interview questions, about things in med school life. So do drop them below. We're having a productive conversation here, and thank you, another aspiring medic, Roshan and Amy, for being so interactive. Love having you guys here. Keep them coming on. So Lucy Shear goes. At medical school, do medical students spend a lot of time with other students or separate? So that, I think, is very much based on which med school you go to and the type of individual you are and the year group you have. It's just so many contextual factors. Overall, in general, medical students do spend a lot of time with other medical students because we are in a 5 or 6 year degree, and we go out on placement and we go out in small groups in firms, and we have very different university time slots to people in other degrees. So like, for example, we might be on placement on a Wednesday morning, whilst people might have Wednesday morning just like one online seminar and nothing else for the rest of the day. Or like when you're in clinical years, especially in clinical years, you start doing on-call stuff on weekends or evening shifts or night shifts. You have long day shifts in hospitals, which are away from campus. For all universities, we have loads of hospitals that are away from campus. So therefore, you end up spending time with medical students. However, saying all of that, you can make plenty of friends in the wider university, especially in years 1 to 3, whilst everyone's there. And even after that, there's plenty of master's students, postgrads, or even students in years below that come through that you become friends with through societies. I think societies is the best way to do that. And in first year, it's societies as well as just freshers events, as well as living in accommodation and making friends with people in your flats and people around you. So I made a bulk of my non-medical friends in my through my society like work that I did, or like society participation and going to those events. So whether I've mentioned before that I was part of like the Bangladesh Society, and I made loads of friends there. We did like performances and stuff, and then through those performances, like we became friends with each other. Things like that really do help you bond. And so I'd encourage you to go to society events in general, take up sports, and that's how you will make your friends. Outside of medical school, in a wider university environment, you do have to be a little bit proactive about it, but that's everyone in general in making friends anyway. So that's what it is. So in short, at medical school, medical students do spend a lot of time with each other and make friends with each other, and do separate, especially in the later clinical years when we're on hospital placement away from campus. But especially in the early clinical years, basically pre-medicine and like early medicine years, pre-clinical years, we do make friends with people wider university, especially being on campus and joining societies. Cool. A lot of waffle there. I hope you took a little bit away from that. But yeah, hope is not lost. One of the reasons why I applied to UCL actually, instead of putting down like Imperial or something, not to say that Imperial is an amazing university, but just one of the reasons was that I wanted to make friends outside of just the sciences, just because I thought that it'd be interesting to have friends who are humanities focused as well, or like arts focused, just because people just have different perspectives. And that was one of the reasons why I thought UCL would be great, because we have loads of amazing humanities and arts subjects and students in it as well. And I ended up making friends with a few of these guys as well, which was nice. But saying all of that, you'll realize that when you come to a higher institution, everyone's got loads of interests. So just because you're a medic doesn't mean you're a pure scientist only, doesn't mean that you like reading or arts or literature, stuff like that. Like, you will make friends with medics a lot of the time, because medics are quite well-rounded people, or well, we hope to think so. And there's obviously differences individually between medics everywhere you go anyway. So that's my 2 pence on the subject. Something that I definitely thought a lot about, as you can clearly see, when it came to applying for med school. All right, Lois has asked me for A-level advice. Lois, I'll be honest with you. If you have anything more specific, I'd be happy to kind of answer A-level advice in general. I wouldn't know where to start. I'd just say make sure you try and smash the exams, because they mean everything. And the way to do that is by revising well, smart, and making sure you practice and do those exam questions, and make sure you know what the exam questions are asking for by looking at the mark schemes and see what they're looking for specifically in phrases. But I did A-level 7 years ago, so I'm guessing it's so much more difficult now, and things have changed completely. And sorry, but I don't have that much great A-level advice, study advice in general. Feel free to hit me up, but I think we've spoken about that in previous sessions as well. What books are good for UCAT? If you guys have any books that you found good for UCAT, drop them below. I mentioned I really, really, really hated the ISC UCAT 400 or 600 questions book, or whatever it is. I really hated that. Just thought that it was not representative of how the UCAT questions were. So I really liked the actual UCAT questions on the website through the mock exams. They were very representative, and I like the Kaplan book for UCAT. I don't remember which one it was. I'm sure there's loads of editions now, and it was just a lot to do with exam technique, and I really needed to start learning exam technique before I could really apply them. I bought books but never used them, Roshan. That sounds like a lot of things in life, to be honest. But yeah, what books are good for UCAT? There's loads of online resources, as I mentioned, and I think Medify is the one that people use the most and do well with, and they substitute for a book because of the fact that they have those online tutorials and resources up on the website. So I don't think in this day and age you really even need a book. Does running a small business count as work experience? Wow, that is a mad question. You guys are really smashing it. I don't know, Aisha, do you have a small business? What is your small business? Drop it below so we can all have a look and support if need be. I think it doesn't count as work experience. No, I'm not going to say that. I don't know what it stands for. It counts as experience in general. Work experience specifically, people normally are looking for like medicine related, but obviously imagine you're doing work experience or you're doing work. So work is definitely like valid, and is good to have on on your personal statement. If you do like a part-time job, it talks about time management skills and stuff like that. Exactly the same with running a small business. I think on a different level though, because you're running it, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it shows that you've got initiative and so many other amazing factors. So yes, definitely include that in your personal statement. It will count as some sort of work slash experience, but doesn't count as medical work experience. That's the only distinguishing factor. Woo, okie dokie. Moon sweet Ayu. Oh, okay. Is that to do with the moons the I don't know, moon sweets. All right, we'll check. We'll be sure to check it out. I was gonna say, is that to do with the new moon sweets? But I don't know how to even say that phrase for some reason. You know, the new sweets or the new ice creams that are out in Tesco. Is it to do with that? If it's not, sorry I mentioned it. But yeah, that was that. Cool. I found ebooks way more helpful, like the We Are Medics one and the very affordable Ace the UCAT ebook. Oh wow, yes, the We Are Medics ebook. I've heard really good things about that from my mentees in previous years, so I would definitely recommend having a look at that. Thank you very much for that, another aspiring medic. You guys are super useful with your answers. Honestly, like, oh, amazing. I can't wait till the day you guys take my job here at Medmentor. Just a year or two, right? I think UCAT Question Bank app was really handy, and used computer-based questions are probably best since it's a computer-based exam. That's very true. Great. Ooh, party favorite. Oh, that's wicked. Cool. All right, we'll be sure to check that out, Aisha, and definitely include that in your personal statement. I think it's more super extracurricular than work experience, but it's probably worth mentioning if you can skill it out too. Little Moons are great though. I can't get a hold of Little Moons, so that's why I was just a little bit excited to hear that you were selling them or something. But I guess that's impossible these days to get a hold of. Anyway, back to the questions. I digress. Feel free to drop your the rest of your questions in, guys. Do I have a question for you guys? Maybe from now on I'll ask you guys a few questions as well, because clearly there's a lot for me to learn at the same time. What is the most all right, for you guys, I want to ask what are you guys most looking forward to when getting into med school? Like the one thing that you're most looking forward to. I can answer from my side. The thing I was most looking forward to getting into med school was literally was socializing and making friends. Like that was the most first priority in first year, because everyone told me make sure you make friends and enjoy yourself. So I was looking forward to having fun. I had not fathomed the amount of work that was needed alongside that fun, but that was that anyway. Yeah, cool. The next question from Lucy Shea, who had asked questions before, is how do you pick a medical school? That is a question that took me many hours to weeks to then months to decide. So you can pick, first of all, 4 med schools to apply to. What I did for those was go to a few open days of a few universities that I was like, maybe I should apply to, and let me find out like if my gut instinct is like I should go for it and if I like the campus or not. A lot of people said don't apply to a med school that doesn't excite you in terms of like the campus, or like the feeling that you go there is not positive, whatever that means. That's what I went by, and so I went to see a few universities in London that would have been good for me that I didn't apply to because I just didn't think it was that exciting. Whilst then I went to like places like Edinburgh and Cardiff and stuff and saw those universities and they seemed pretty amazing. So I thought of applying to 1 or 2. And then the other stuff that I did to apply smart in order to try and get my med school offers, before I applied, I made sure to make like a portfolio of all the medical schools that I had the option of like going for, and seeing what they required in their entry requirements, what the type of candidates they wanted in, what they wanted to see on an application, and then basically I matched that with the skills that I had and the things I had in my application, and then I was like, okay, so for example, I had really good GCSE grades. I knew Birmingham really liked GCSE grades because they didn't have UCAT or BMAT back in the day, and I was like, oh, I should apply to Birmingham because that will I'm very much more likely to get an interview based on my strengths of my application. Obviously, I didn't get the interview at the end of it, which was mad as well in my thought process because I thought that was a safe bet. But like that's the way I was thinking of when I was applying to med school. And then the rest of the stuff is like your own personal interest. Like, do you like societies there? Do you like the type of people there? Is it diverse? Is it like loads of things, loads of factors on how do you pick a med school. But yeah, I'd start off with going on to that their Medical Schools Council website with that PDF document of the entry requirements of all the medical schools in the country. Have a look at that and whittle it down from there. That's what I'd say. Oh, another aspiring medic, you are amazing. We Are Medics application tool was really, really useful to apply strategically. It collects all freedom of information requests, which is basically insider info. Amazing. So basically, what I used to do is like I went onto like UCL's website and then I went into like the archive sections that are so hard to get access to or something after spending hours on it, and found out like, oh, like most people who got into UCL in like 2014 had like, let's say 1A star, 2As or something, like when they got in through A level. So like that's the caliber of applicant that you end up getting, or like they had this many work experience or this many points on the application in like Cardiff University, like what the cutoffs were. I went on student room and everything. It was all a mess. So now the fact that We Are Medics have that type of tool, that is brilliant to see. Another aspiring medics, thank you so much for that. Cool. A few other things that another aspiring medic mentioned is fully agreed. Speaking to patients as a med student is something that you're looking forward to. That sounds really good, especially after, I'm guessing, really rewarding work experience opportunities maybe you've had, talking to people in general, being just a student or someone like under 18 who doesn't even know what's going on. And so imagine as a med student / then as a doctor what you can do when you're speaking to patients, which is pretty amazing. And that is definitely something to look forward to. Meeting new people and placement. I can't wait to be on the ward, says Amy, in a clinic or in theatre and actually understand what's going on. Amy, I'll be honest with you, I still don't know what's going on half the time, but it's all part of the job. It's faking it till you're making it. But yeah, you definitely understand more of what's going on, and like it's really cool to see the science that you've learned in terms of in a book, or like the questions that you've been doing, and you're like, oh my god, this does actually exist in real life and it can translate here. That's the little nerd in you going, whoa, that's amazing. But yeah, that's another thing to look forward to. Great. Cool. Amy's question is, how do you think teacher given GCSE grades last year will affect admissions this year? That's a really good question. So GCSEs do not actually count as much as other parts of the application process, generally because of the fact that UCAT and BMAT exist. A lot of the time the UCAT and BMAT are in place of the GCSE scores, as long as you meet the minimum requirement, which I think a lot of people did in the last year, because I think grade inflation was a thing, like it went high and stuff like that. I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that went on last year that people went back and forth on. So I think yes, people will be meeting the more minimum requirements, but GCSE grades aren't really taken that much into account when it comes to actual applications. They care more about the UCAT or the BMAT, and then your predicted grades, and then obviously you get an interview based on that. Your GCSE grades are like, can you meet the minimum requirements? And obviously, if you've done better, and it's a points-based system in some of these universities, along with your personal statement experiences, then obviously those will be higher. There might be higher thresholds to get into a few of those unis. But that's me speculating. I have no idea. A lot of A-star students might not want to apply to medicine. Oh, I say that. Let's be honest. They will, because they're A-star students, and everyone in year 12 and 13 who does really well, medicine is always on their thought process and their radar. So yeah, I don't know really. I'd say GCSEs don't matter that much in general, so I wouldn't care too much about what's going on with that. I would just keep on smashing the admissions exams and making those predicted grades count for A level. The GCSE grades really mattered when you apply for like summer schools, like competitive summer schools. I think that's where I realized that was key. That's a good reason to get it. So that's why, yeah, I got into like Unique, for example, the Oxford Summer School. Whilst if I had like one less A-star in the subject, I wouldn't have got in, which is like crazy. I didn't even get into for medicine. I got in for just a science subject. Cool. Okay. Roshan goes, I'm most excited about being involved in a different part of a patient journey. Nervous about retraining, to be honest, though. I think, Roshan, you got nothing to be nervous about. You know how the healthcare system works, and you are comfortable in that environment, I think. So retraining will be, I think, more comfortable for you compared to everyone else. So don't worry about that. Involved in different parts of patient journey is, I think, very different. Yeah, being a doctor or a medical student is very different. Part of the journey is very much more diagnosis based, science based, explanation based. It's a bit, and it's I don't think that in a hospital, doctors build rapport with patients. However, healthcare staff have a different type of rapport to them, doing more of like the day-to-day jobs that you'd require in a hospital. And whilst like doctors kind of are running around a lot of the time, so can't really put all their efforts into a patient. But I say that, and that's probably the same for all healthcare professionals, but just in different way. What is your view on CBL? I'm guessing that's something like problem-based learning, but I don't know what the C, critical-based learning. C stands for critical. If it's basically the same as PBL, problem-based learning, I think my view is has definitely improved from when I applied. When I applied for med school, I was trying to stay away from problem-based learning because I thought it sounded quite vague, and I didn't think it sounded like I was getting taught. I was going to be or case-based learning. I didn't think I was going to be taught much. So therefore I applied to medical schools that were very much more traditional in their lecture styles, content heavy, pre-med then med, pre-clin then clinical medicine stuff. So I wanted a real grounding of the sciences. But now looking back on it, because all traditional university med schools now include case-based learning throughout the medical program, I really enjoy case-based learning and problem-based learning throughout my medical school years, and I think we had very minimal amounts of it, and maybe that's why I enjoyed it, but I really liked the application of it, and whatever I learnt, I was able to see it in a case, like a 32-year-old man would come in with shortness of breath, and basically would have an asthma attack. What would I give, or like what type of thing physiologically is going on? Like, it's quite interesting to kind of have that played out in front of you, albeit in a piece of paper. It adds some perspective of what you're learning. Whilst like in my preclinical years, I had a lot of just pure scientific questions, which I was like, I don't know why I'm learning it. Like I came here for medicine, not science. So not pure science. So I think it was really good to have that CBL stuff. I would probably, now looking back on it, apply to universities that had more CBL or PBL stuff learning, because I really like that type of learning. It's really good, and it keeps you on your toes, and like it's all about the active recall, but in like a applied manner, and you learn more as you go through that. Cool. Last few questions from Lucy Shear. What could be the negative of going to medical school in Wales? So I applied to Cardiff to do medicine, and I didn't get in, but I was really looking forward to go to Wales for medicine. I thought it would have been really cool to see like how rural medicine is, how like rural GP practices work, and hospitals in general. And that stands for like a lot of places in the country in England, like in the rural Scotland and rural parts of England, they are very similar in the way their healthcare systems work. You see a different type of patient, you see different types of things coming up. It might be more slow paced, so it might be worthwhile in terms of teaching rather than tertiary and like hectic centres in like London or Manchester, in like cities. The negatives, I just said all positives there. The negatives I think about going to med school in Wales, for me, it was really far away from where I lived. So obviously if you live in Wales, that doesn't count for you. The other thing is that like there's not that many universities in Wales, or like that you can kind of meet people from. So it's quite nice being in London, having like six medical schools here, and like God knows how many universities, like probably above 20. And so it was a really good like university student vibe being in central London, whatever that means, to be honest. And it was like, yeah, you just were connected with loads more people. So I have friends from like all across London and now England, in different universities. And one of the reasons why is because London's a great place to network. Obviously, on top of that, being in big cities, you have access to more tertiary facilities, different types of patients that are more tertiary level. It's quite interesting cases. You tend to normally get the most competitive specialties, most competitive people within those specialties getting into these city universities, university hospitals. So you get taught by the best of the best, like world leading researchers in these cities, compared to like in rural areas of Wales. But as I'm saying all of this, like Cardiff University is in Wales, and that they have med school. Swansea does have med school. The Cardiff University one that I know of is world leading in its own right. So you do get those perks. Anyway, I wish I really badly waffled that. Apologies, but I don't know. I can't really think of anything more in terms of negatives. Any of you guys have negatives about going to med school in Wales? I don't know. I have a family friend who went to med school in Wales, and he loved it so much that he's still there. So it's pretty cool. Would you say that going to a London uni might help you get FY points in London? No, it does not. Bodyband Studio, sorry. It used to, like back in like 2000 up to like 2005 and stuff, and then they cut that system and then they made it a points-based system. So in order to get a FY post in London, you really need to do well in your med school exams and come like in the first few deciles, and do really well in the SJT and stuff. But that depends on all across the UK. Obviously, if you're getting into a competitive med school, you're going to need higher marks to get into those competitive like deciles in the first place. So that's going to be hard in its own right. And so sometimes it can be even a disadvantage going to a London university to get a place in London, because London unis are traditionally more competitive or take in people who are more competitive, for example. So that's another thing. The other things that you guys are talking about was, I agree, I love the idea of CBL. I applied to 3 CBL med schools. That's good. Can be helpful for contextualizing your learning. Definitely. I think most med schools use some level of it. Yes, the GMC have required all med schools to use it, and I think more and more of the med schools, even the traditional ones, are trying to incorporate more of it in, which is really good to see. Something for CBL or PBL. Actually, you know what, from my point of view as a medical student, like seeing CBL, PBL type stuff now is very much like a simulated patient scenario, but on paper. And like what I see in a clinic is sometimes more high yield, just seeing the symptoms on a CBL and PBL, and then seeing the person in a clinic after that, because actually it gives you a theory or basis in that writing, and it's very similar in terms of like presenting and stuff like that. So it's quite it's a really good thing, especially looking back on it in hindsight with clinical experience. So CBL and PBL is really good. Try joining Future Docs of the World. They have monthly case studies and then a seminar to answer it. I love it, so I've decided that could will be an option, since they have a QMBUL big focus on CBL. If you aren't too sure about CBL, PBL is for you, then it's definitely worth a shot. Amy, so it was quite interesting. I went to the open day at Barts in Queen Mary, so Queen Mary and Barts University. And I remember speaking to the medical students. I was like, how's the PBL stuff? Like, is it good or something? And I think I remember, like, this is like obviously 7 years ago or so. Like, the students were like, yeah, Fridays are so jokes because we have PBL day for the whole of Friday, which means we just sit there and we just chat and we chill and we have like a day off. And I was like, what? So whoever I spoke to there, which were a few of the med students, were like, they didn't do much work and just like waffled their way through CBL. So that was my idea of what PBL and CBL actually meant. However, in practice, it's not the same. Like, people do actually work in groups and get to an answer, and it's really good. Like, group study is sick. It's really good, interesting, and it's good because you're supported in different ways rather than just a lecturer talking at you. You can get facilitated learning there as well, with lecturers being around and PhD students to help you. When you say good in your med school exams, don't you mean finals? No, I mean like in the clinical years, like in your 3rd and 4th year, I think, of most degrees, if not your 4th and 5th year of like Imperial, UCL, Oxford, Cambridge. They those are the years that they count towards your EPM, so your F1, F2 year stuff. It's to do with EPM, which is your ranking against others in your year group for finals, as well as SJT. I check out the UKFBO for more info. Yes. So actually, life update from me before I go. So in the last week, all the med students in the country found out their EPM scores, like legitimately, like your final EPM scores, including your SJT results, as well as then which deanery you've gotten into. And so it's been a mad week for all us medical students, because now we found out which area of the country we're going to be in for the next 2 years, which is super exciting and daunting and everything all at the same time. So I'm going to be in, so I applied for the EBH area, which is Essex, Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire, because I wanted a little bit of like DGH, so outside of central London hospital stuff. Also, central London was hella competitive anyway, and I didn't want to be more in that bubble, I think. But yeah, so I applied to EBH, I got it. So I think a lot of people are excited to see where the next 2 years are going to be for them, and so that's what's happened in the med school finals type of stuff that's been going on. So you know what? Next week, if you have questions about EPM, if you have questions about final year of med school stuff or like stuff to do for your portfolio as you go along the years, to help you get good F1, F2 placements, academic foundation program placements, like feel free to have a look yourself first of all in UKFPO. And any questions, feel free to drop them below. Next week when we have our session again, I'm sure now just going through that process myself, I have fresh ideas of what that means. But obviously things can change as well, which is great. Yes. Oh, thank you guys so much. You guys are amazing. Thank you guys. Ah, bless you all. Yeah. So it's been a good week. It's been a mad week. I also had a mock exam for my OSCE, and those are really fun. So like how you guys have mock MMIs, and that's how mock OSCEs go. Basically, absolutely just rinse you. So difficult. It's absolute jokes, but it's a good learning experience. So yeah, it's been a wild week, but it's been good to see you guys at the end of it. That would be great to have a chat about that process. Definitely, Roshan. I wish that someone talked to me more about EPM, what to expect from med school, what I need to be aiming for, or things like. It just feels like we're running around like headless chickens for 5 to 6 years sometimes. So I think med schools are doing more to kind of make that process seem better, and it's good to speak to years above as well. And that's how I got so much of my information, which I was lucky to get. So I think, yeah, definitely let's have some more conversations about what you would do in med school. What does end of a 6-year degree look for? And it's good for you guys to know, because actually they're looking for you to have a good idea of what life as a medical student will be like when you're in here for 5 to 6 years. If you know that you need like a certain number of ranking points or something for like F1, and you need to have leadership skills and stuff, it's good to like even think about it and motivate yourself before uni. So like last thing that I'd leave you guys with, I think you guys are in year 12 and 13. So yes, I only found out that Scotland is classed as one deanery. Yes, the entire part of Scotland is one deanery, which is absolute shambles. So now whoever's going into deaneries in one deanery in Scotland, now they are now ranking what area or part of Scotland they want to go into for the next cycle of the program, the application program, which is still good as well. But like being in that deanery in itself is a big thing. But yeah, there's loads of stuff going on with that. So yeah, Roshan, that's another thing to look at. Yes, let's have that conversation next time. I think that would be great. And let's see if there's any last questions. Yes, so another aspiring medic, all right, has asked a question, and Lucia. What medical schools focus on A levels and GCSE grades to select applicants? That one is something that's way too broad for me to answer, I think. Look at the Medical Schools Council website, and they will give you everything on that document about GCSE and A-level requirements for these universities. And to finish off, last few questions. Another aspiring medic asks, favorite medical TV shows or films? So my dad made me watch The Impossible, which is a movie. I think a few of you guys might have watched that. And so that was a really good movie to like, because the person who was in the movie was also a doctor and was able to help in a disaster scenario. And he was like, wow, that's amazing. Like someone could do that. And actually one of the kids who was part of the true story of this movie. So the story was about like, in Indonesia, there was a tsunami on Boxing Day back in 2008 or 5. I'm not too sure. And so like one of the kids that was part of the family in that movie in real life actually went to UCLMS school, was in a few years above me as well, which is quite interesting. Obviously there's other things like Grey's Anatomy that I watch still, and I'm on like season 16 or 17, I don't even know. I wasted so many hours of my life on that, but that's something I've watched. And I think we've spoken about The Good Doctor as well, but I think next week we'll touch upon more about medical TV shows and films, because it in itself is a different form of media that I think is definitely looked down upon by intellectuals, but in itself can give you good insight to like an idea of the life of medicine. Please, I binged Grey's in 2 months, Amy. Oh no. But yeah, so let's talk about medical TV shows and films in next week, because it'll be good to find out what you guys watch as well. Maybe I can take a few from that. And yes, it is a small world, another paramedic, because I met the guy. Well, I saw him in the library in my first year. He was like 2 or 3 years older than me. I went up and said hello to him and stuff, and then I just moved on. He must have thought I was very confused. But yeah, it's a very, very, very small world. And I remember him saying in a newspaper article that in his UCL med school interview, they did not talk about anything apart from his experience in that tsunami and what it meant for him, that seeing his mum as a doctor, doing so much for people, for his own family in a disaster scenario like that. And that got him into med school. And he talked about that in the newspaper article, actually, which is quite interesting to see. Yes, I don't think you would be at a disadvantage in terms of foundation year, since the UKFPO has changed its ranking system. Yes, in foundation year since. Yeah, I think that UKFPO, that's a bit mad. I don't even know what to say on that. I only found it, yeah. Cool. I'm not sure if it would impact on your specialty training and application, but can't imagine that it would. I personally not imagine planning on intercalating, as I have an MSc and BSc already. Yes, Roshan, you're collecting these degrees. I love it. It's absolutely amazing. Amy, what a mood. Grey's Anatomy. Haran the medic as well has been like, yes, 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 yes. Thanks for joining us, guys. All right, cool. Let me just yeah, all right, yeah. Let's definitely talk about that in the next time. Brilliant, cool, guys. Thank you all so much for joining me today on the Medmentor live sessions. I'm just seeing if there's any other questions. No, there's not. Amazing. Next week we'll be talking about all things med school applications based, as per usual. We'll maybe talk about a few of the movies and TV series that we've watched as well, and have a little chat about that. And we'll definitely run through what to think about through medical school, in terms of like trying to get FY, F1, F2 posts, or like increasing your portfolio, and like what to focus on and what not to, things like that, just to give you guys some perspective and some extra motivation. And you'll see how so many things that you're doing in before you've gone into med school and just been applying, you'll see how those things translate into medicine as well, and how they actually continue, but in different ways. And that's a really good thing to think about, especially through this time. So well done, guys, for doing all the stuff that you're doing for your applications. It's been super interesting chatting with you, and it's been a great end to the week for me, being back on here. Especially thanks to Roshan, Bodyband Studio, Amy, another aspiring medic, and a few questions from Aisha and Lucy Shear. Thank you all so much for contributing. It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much. And congrats to Roshan all over again, for another offer, which is so good to see. Good, amazing, 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 amazing. All right, guys, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week. All right, bye bye. See you later.